that can sit on top of the arousal assessment. Oh, somebody recorded. Thank you. Awesome, Kristen. It's a real bummer if you do the whole meeting and then you're like, I didn't record it. So let me get an idea of where you guys are with equipment. I know Ginny, do you have Eager and B-Lab? Okay, just the Eager.
No, but Beth has some B-Lab computers and I'll end up being able to use one of those. So I've been trying to learn more about it too.
Okay, great. And do you do Bonnie Joe or Bonnie? What does your mom call you?
I like Bonnie Joe. As I got older, I went with the Joe. So Bonnie Joe is my first name. It's not a middle name.
Okay, good to know. Yeah. So what are you doing as far as equipment?
So I'm brand new. I came at the end of the summer cohort, so I've been trying to catch up on the videos. Super new. My first time joining you guys, so I have zero equipment. So yeah. Here
Where
I
are
am.
you? Where do you live?
Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, real close to
Ooh.
Mike. Mhm,
Oh, okay. Okay.
mhm.
So are you well, you'll be practicing in the same area as Mike?
Yes, I'm a licensed mental health clinician. I specialize in trauma. I went over to a few of his orientations in the past and got a chance to meet him. But yeah, so I'm in the anti-human trafficking field. So I do a lot of work with survivors of human trafficking and the traumas involved. And so I'm adding this to other certifications like EMDR or RT. Just to be more equipped to help a general population.
There's another woman down in Florida. Who's doing also trafficking and yeah. I will see if I can connect you to. I'll reach out to her.
That would be awesome. Awesome. And then if you can put me on a list, I'm already on the Google list, but put me on a list to be contacted for equipment, that will be great.
Okay, so Kristen will reach out to you in regards to equipment. The equipment we have an agreement with B Medic and the equipment gets loaned like in chunks.
Okay.
So you'll actually, I think you missed this.
I missed the first chunk. That's okay.
Okay.
It's all good.
Okay. All right.
If you'd like, I can confirm, Miss Bonnie Joe, we do have you in the winter group. So when I send the RB Medic contact the list of names in very early January, you'll be included in that group and you'll get all that information.
Okay. Am I premature joining this call? Should I leave and come back and just fully go into the winter or?
Angelica?
I'm going to be like Ginny. It doesn't hurt to hear things more than once whenever you're learning something. So you're welcome to stay. If you're like, ugh, this doesn't make any sense, you're welcome to sign off. You're welcome to come back again in the winter.
Okay, I'm just going to stay and not ask questions so I don't take away from the learning that's already taking place.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Okay, who's 18644?
This is Dr. William Scott.
Okay, good. Okay, we spoke. And do you have equipment?
Dr. Sadar, the only thing I have is a heart rate variability monitor that I actually purchased myself.
Yeah, that's not going to help you.
Not gotten it. Okay, it's not going to help me. Okay. All right, very good.
Okay, so I think the same thing, probably depending when you signed up with the equipment. Maybe Kristen can look that up and chime in again and let us know. I think you might as well be in the January distribution of the equipment.
Right.
Okay, Amy, what you got?
So I have the equipment and I've taken the course and I've been practicing. And And it's great timing because my questions were all about the assessment that we're going to talk about today. So that's exactly where I'm at.
Okay. And we'll see if you want to start, I'll go through the rest of the folks that are here and we'll see if you want to start out with questions or if we should do the talking and see if we answer questions. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Paula. How you doing?
Hi, good.
What do you have in the way of equipment?
So I do have the equipment. I'm in section 7 of the course, but I haven't started using the equipment. I think part of it is from a fear. I don't know why. I'm trying to work through that. Like, I'm going to mess it up. So I am determined that I'm going to sit down and do an assessment on myself and just start doing it. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Hopefully after today, you feel like you're ready to dive in.
Mhm.
Yeah. If not, give us a holler and we'll get you to that spot. Okay,
Okay,
but
all right.
we're all
Yeah.
going to dive into the deep end today.
Yeah.
Um,
I do
Kirsten?
need to jump off about 5 to 12. I had a meeting come up, but I'll finish watching the recording the
Yeah.
last hour.
Okay. And Kirsten, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. You got your equipment, right? You got the BMedic? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've been using it, right?
Yeah, slowly but surely. I
Nice.
just got the what is it called? The little quick
Quick test?
Yes. And I
Okay.
haven't had a chance to use it yet, but I got it. So
Very good.
pretty
Okay.
excited.
Are you familiar with a TOVA or an IVA?
Yeah, Tova, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that'll give you kind of like similar data.
Yeah.
Good. And Ala, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good seeing you. Help me remember what you got with the equipment.
So I got the B-Medic and I got
Okay.
me also a laptop that's compatible, which is nice of them. And then I'm halfway through section 7 and I hooked up my husband last week. I wanted to get more familiar with CZ, like all the areas. So I just did it. And because I also was pushing it off a little bit because I felt like not ready yet, but the tutorial was actually very helpful. I was just like pausing and stopping and just doing it one step at a time with the tutorial.
Good. Okay. And you got good impedance?
I wasn't sure exactly what I was looking at after, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I did get good impedance. I was able to, all 3 lights were set. But
Beautiful.
afterwards, when I put in like all the numbers and the report that came after, I didn't know how to like read that yet, but I felt like, wow, we got to that point. So it was felt like an accomplishment.
And we're not going to do, well, I guess we will do reports today for the midline assessment, but we just, before this meeting, we were on a call with BMedic and they're updating the report. I haven't even seen any of it yet, but we'll take a look at it the next day or two and see, and then you guys will be getting a copy of that. And I think we're going to be happy to have that updated report.
Great, thank you.
So, all right. So let's see. We are going to talk about a midline assessment. Why? Why do we even think about it? Okay. So we've got the arousal assessment, and that's one piece of information, right? So I was just on a webinar yesterday. Joy Lunt was doing a webinar about how to do a midline assessment that I sat in on. And she was saying, as a psychotherapist, you ask people, how do you sleep? And as a neurofeedback practitioner, you ask people, tell me about your sleep. Tell me, when do you go to sleep? How long does it take you? How does it feel going to sleep? How do you do with staying asleep? What wakes you up if you get woken up? How do you wake up? How do you feel when you wake up? So it's no longer just, how's sleep going? It's, I want as much information about your sleep as I can get. And so we can get a limited amount of information with the arousal assessment, and we can get a good amount if we dig deep, but then we can even get more if we go into the midline assessment, because now we can start to get data and see how that complements our arousal assessment. And then if you want to get even more information, right, you could do a quantitative EEG. The midline assessment can be useful along the way. You don't want to do quantitative EEGs every couple of months or every other month of training, but you can easily do a midline assessment and get some data. It's not going to be all the data that you would get from a Q, but it's going to be more than you're going to get from your interviews. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll add, because the brain is complex, a person can potentially come across in the arousal assessment as, for example, over-aroused, but the brain can produce over-arousal behaviors in ways where either there are areas that are over-aroused, or there can be areas that are under-aroused that are resulting in an over-aroused picture. So
Do you want to explain like over aroused and under aroused, how you would see that in the data as opposed to, well, in terms of like high beta or?
yeah, so again, this is just the getting some type of an EEG assessment allows you to potentially avoid training. I mean, if you began to train based upon the arousal assessment, and it was really the brain's producing that in a way that's kind of opposite to what you're observing, you would learn that very, very quickly with the training, but the training might be unpleasant for a little while for the client. So it allows you to kind of get a better feeling for the protocol that you want to use. And Angelica asked about over and under arousal in the data. It's kind of looking at the lower frequency range. It's lower, but it's also slower. And the higher frequency range is higher, but it's also faster. And so, for example, you can have under arousal, slower and excess lower frequency amplitude in the frontal lobes, which is an area that should inhibit. That's what the frontal lobes are about. It's about inhibition. But if that's not working the way it should because of the excess lower or slower frequencies, a person can appear, for example, hyperactive. So again, you can see the outward signs with either excess higher frequency amplitude or excess lower frequency amplitude. And these, the midline and the other types of assessments, the single channel at CZ or the mini maps or the mini Qs, those are just ways to give you a feeling is the brain producing what you're observing in a way that is parallel, or, are there differences?
So I think we'll probably end up doing a midline assessment today
We'll
on,
see.
yeah, me or Mitch. But what kind of questions do you all have? Where, let's kind of have a discussion.
And I want to ask, because I've heard that some people either had a harder time to find it. Did you all find the document on the midline assessment? It's in the Thinkific platform, so it should be there, it should be available to you.
Okay, so I guess where along the way would you introduce it? Let's start with that, right? Y'all are probably going to be working with clients you already have, right? As opposed to somebody that calls up and you're like, hey, great, here's a new client, let's do neurofeedback with them. We introduce it to our current clients, and usually it goes something like, I'm learning this neurofeedback. It's a way of, looking at how we can train your brain. I usually describe it in terms of like a physical therapy for the brain. And I'm not going to say to people, I think you should do neurofeedback. I like to get people to say what they think they should do. And so I might introduce it by saying, I want to tell you about something, but first I want to understand, do you feel like these things that we're talking about, the anxiety you have or the difficulties you have with sleep or whatever, do you feel like it's because you just haven't learned how to do life, like you don't have the skills? Or do you feel like there's something in your brain that's just not letting you get to what you know you need to do? And, kind of like if you have a broken leg, do you think you can't walk well because you don't know how to walk, or because, your leg's broken and it's not doing what it's supposed to do? And if somebody says, oh no, it's in my brain, that's like, okay, let me tell you about this. What do you think about this? Okay, there's a way we can retrain your brain. It's like a physical therapy. Okay, and we could do, as I've been talking with you, I've been thinking about how your brain works, and I've been listening and understanding that sometimes your brain is in a state of emergency, more so than you would like it to be when you don't need it to be. Or I've been listening and you tell me that your brain gets drifty. And when I'm listening to that, I'm thinking about, sometimes your brain is just kind of like idling slow and letting in information that you don't want it to let in. We could actually do an assessment and look at that and see what kind of data we can get when we read the electrical activity in your brain. Okay, so I've heard of some people that, like, somebody comes in right away, they're like, this is how we do it. We're going to do this assessment. That's part of my intake. And like I said, everybody's got a different style. I prefer to have clients want to do what I want them to do. If you kind of get that.
Yeah.
So that being the case, then we kind of set them up, right? Okay, we go into, this is just going to be reading brain waves. It's like I'm taking your temperature. So what's your level of comfort, I guess, with doing that? Or how have you been thinking about introducing it? What feels comfortable for you? One of the things we want to get from these community meetings is, we learn from each other. My style doesn't work for everybody. Mitch probably has a different way of introducing it.
Yeah.
So thoughts on that? How would would you introduce it? What feels comfortable for you? When we first started learning neurofeedback, there was a thing I remember that came up. People didn't even know how to talk about neurofeedback. So one of the things that came out on a listserv was, what's your elevator speech? How do you explain it to somebody? And we really worked on that because it was like, we would take like, 3 pages of explanation to explain it to somebody. And now we kind of say, it's like taking your temperature. It's measuring, getting information, and helping you learn how to change what your brain's doing. We've really kind of been able to talk about it more fluidly. But I remember early on, it's learning a new language and how do you say it? How do you bring it to somebody? So are y'all feeling comfortable with just introducing it to somebody, even a relative or a family member or a friend?
I could talk for a minute about what I do. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
So, I have family members and friends, which makes it a little bit easier because they know a little bit about what I'm doing, but they don't really know what I'm doing. And so sometimes I start by giving them a really simple, this is what neurofeedback is. And then I'll talk about how our brains work, how information comes into our brain, how it moves from the front to the back, or different sensory areas to the back, and how that then comes to the front and what does it do there. And then I'll go back to neurofeedback and say, talk about how it's kind of measuring or recording or looking at how that's all working in your brain and where it should be. I talk about what it's not, because a lot of people think that you're inserting things into their brain. And so I try to keep it really simple in the beginning. I won't even start a session with the person until after I've had one session with them, talking to them, answering questions, finding out about what it is that they're struggling with or what they'd like to work on. And then after we do all of that, then I'll ask them to go through like our therapy agreement. I'll give them the arousal form. And I've also used the Amen checklist, which I have found to be really helpful in helping them see what parts of their brain. So far, it's been syncing up with what I find with the mini Q. And then I find that the next time that I meet with them, when we're actually going to start maybe doing an assessment and training, I pretty much go through the same thing over again, because they don't always get it the first time, or they think about it for a little bit and then they have questions about it. So we kind of start over. And depending on how much they do get, because I'll ask them what do you think this is about? I may offer more or less detail than what I did the first time.
Thanks, Jenny. Anything anybody might add to that? Or I really like the part about, I also tell them what it's not. Does anybody have a midline assessment that we want to bring up and look at? We could look at the data, or we can do one today. We can collect the data and look at it. Preferences? No.
I'm not on my neurofeedback computer, but I just did a mini Q with somebody that had kind of interesting results. And so if you want me to talk about it, or if you just want to do one, that's fine, because I think it's always good to see somebody go through the process.
Yeah, I think we want to stick with the midline before we go to
Right.
the mini Q. That's the next step. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a report. It's not on this computer, but I'm not 100% sure. Like I hooked everything up correctly. I mean, I did it with the impedance test was good, and I don't have the numbers. But afterwards, is it possible I could email it or have someone just like look over it, like after the I don't know, later on?
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that whole, if you have like a whole case, we can do that in a mentoring session. You get a mentoring session with the course, so we can do that. That way, pairing everything together is really helpful, right? So even when we look at a QEEG result, which has lots of data in it, it's important that you want to find data that substantiates other pieces of data. So you can't just look at one thing and say, got it, this is what we're going to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a very important point. You always want to look for what we call clinical correlation. So with the midline assessment or the mini Q, or certainly with a Q, it can be enticing to look at the data and say, oh, this person has this, or this person must experience this based upon the data. And, again, everybody's brain is a little different. The brain is very, very complicated. We are looking at just limited information. And so having the arousal assessment, having the EEG data, having your observational data, ultimately, you want to put it all together to arrive at what you feel is the best approach for this particular person.
So we can go ahead and set one up. You want to do me or you want me to do you?
You'll do me.
I'll do Mitch. Okay, so we're going to do a midline on Mitch. I'm going to share my screen and interrupt me anytime, with questions or.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, the arousal form that was mentioned, is that the form that's in the manual that's several pages long, or is there a different one?
I think there are actually two things in the manual. And so Ginny, it sounds like she gives it to the person. We use a series of questionnaires if we're doing a complete assessment, with the QEEG. But if I'm doing my training based on, an arousal assessment and a midline assessment, I just go through the questions as part of my, intake and ongoing treatment. But there should be two different documents in there.
Okay.
And they both have arousal in them. I can look it up at some point.
Okay.
Tell you, but they're in there, I know.
All right, I'll look. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna open B-Lab. Let me make sure it's not already open. You closed it, right?
Yes.
It always takes a minute to load. It's not because your computer is slow, it's because it's loading a lot. It's got a lot of programming in there. In the new report that we're going to get, it's going to really break down the different frequencies. And again, I don't think I even have it on this computer, so I can't show it to you. Oh, it doesn't like that I have Zoom on. But that's kind of too bad. I gotta have Zoom on.
Well, you can get rid of maybe.
No.
Yeah. I don't
All right. So I like to get rid of this while I'm getting things set up. And I have to, let's get rid of that. I gotta get your guys' picture out of the way. All right. You all see the screen, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, I don't see you guys anymore, so you might have to,
speak up.
yeah. All right, so the first thing I want to do is, I guess I will, Mitch is not in there. So I'm gonna add him. M-I-S-A. Whatever you do is how you code your people. And now I want to get rid of the 2-channel. So I'm going to go to settings and I want to go to,
Display at the bottom.
I'm going to just do one trace. Okay. Anybody, 2-channel training. What is that? Anybody know? I changed from 2 channels to 1 channel. Okay, so we use 3 sensors in order to measure what we're measuring, right? With the midline assessment, we're going to be doing referential measurements, not training, measurements. So we're measuring at one site. We're going to start it at FZ. We're going to go to CZ, and then we're going to go to PZ, and we're going to measure at the site, and we're going to make a reference as well. Where did we put the reference? Behind, we're going to put the reference behind the left ear. Okay, and then we have a ground. That's 1 channel. So on your ProComp, can you see my ProComp? Somebody say yes if I'm holding it up good to the camera, please.
Yes.
Okay, so you've got channel 1 and channel 2. If I put anything in channel 2, what am I doing? I'm doing the same thing at a different site. Okay, so what I talked about first was referential training. You can also do sequential training, right? I could do a C3 minus C4, that's sequential training. And I can do that. I could do C3 minus C4 and PZ. 2 separate things. I'm asking the computer to read 2 separate things at the same time, and that would be 2-channel training. We're not going to do that early on. As you're learning through this whole course, you're going to be doing 1-channel training, and you're going to be doing either referential training, which is reading 1 site, or sequential training, which is reading 2 sites. Any questions about that? That's an important concept. Okay, it's kind of basic, but it's confusing when you're learning it. No questions, I'll go on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to set up what I want the program to read. So I'm going to go into filter settings. And I'm not going to be doing any rewards, nothing down here because we're not training. We're just measuring. Oh, sorry. Am I going to do it on rewards or inhibits? It
Yes.
doesn't matter.
Really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So I'm going to just keep it simple. I'm going to do all inhibits. And I'm going to measure, I want to measure the slower frequencies.
And you're beginning to put in what's going to be available in the future. Today,
Okay.
you just put in a couple inhibits and a reward, and the report brings up
Everything.
delta and theta and alpha and then the peak alpha. So yeah, you're doing it on an advanced report, which isn't yet available.
I'm not doing it on an advanced.
Well, you
do
were
I-
about to, by
I'm-
putting it in the frequencies that you want to look at.
So sorry, guys, we're just between an update we've been working on for months here, and I'm confused. So they need to put something in, no?
Right, yes. You can put anything in the inhibit. I would say you should just put in the ordinary 2 to 7, 22 to 36, and 12 to 15 reward. You need to put something in, but it really doesn't.
I'm so confused about what it's gonna what it's gonna give us then. It's gonna give us the peak alpha frequencies.
And it's going to give us the delta, the average delta, the
Okay.
average theta, the average
Okay,
everything.
okay. So you're gonna have to do the talking because Bernard's got me totally confused now on where we are and what's gonna come in the new report.
Once you see it, it'll be simple.
Okay, doke.
Question.
Yep.
It's just back one step. So when I was doing the midline assessment, like following a tutorial, my sensors have different colors than the ones that you had. So I was a little confused because I think there was like a red one.
Okay,
Does
yep.
that mean anything different?
No, we'll come back to that before we do the hookups. It's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I guess I'm confused about what to tell them because they're gonna get the update. So they need to put this in.
No.
Tell
The
them
update.
what they, just do it.
For now, follow what we're doing here. We want to keep it simple. You and I need yet to thoroughly look at the other updates, to use it, to see how it'll work before they're getting it. So,
No, I'm
They
just
are not-
asking you to do the talking now. You don't have to explain it to me, explain it to
yeah,
them.
so again, for what we're about to do, you need to put something in the inhibit bands and in the reward bands. I would just say, put in what we call a standard protocol, which is what Angelica's put in there. And so that's 2 to 7 as the lower inhibit band, 22 to 36 for the higher inhibit band, and a 12 to 15 for the reward band. Don't forget to turn the filters on, because if the filters aren't on, it will not generate any data. So turn them on and you're ready to go.
Okay, so we'll just minimize that, and you can see here, we have the filters as selected. There's the 2 to 7, there's the 12 to 15, and there's the 22 to 36. Okay? I
So
need to
I
select
have a
feedback
question.
for the program to run, but I'm going to turn off the monitor so that he's not looking at anything. Because again, we're measuring, we're not training. Okay? So, to the question. Yep.
I have a question. What are those filter bands? What are those telling us?
Okay, the inhibit bands, again, those are for training purposes, and what they are telling us, the inhibits will set thresholds that will look at the frequency ranges that you have put in there. So for example, 2 to 7 hertz, the program will read that frequency, and when the amplitude that you set, and then again, we will look at this in detail when we're training. This isn't about training, this is about assessment, but the amplitude that you set for training, when the patient's lower frequency amplitude is less than the threshold, it will give the patient a certain type of visual and auditory, and if you have the tactile feedback. If and when the amplitude gets larger than your thresholding, the program will give the patient different feedback. And in this way, the brain begins to learn to produce more of the reward frequency and less of the inhibit frequencies. And so the brain begins to learn how to modify its electrical activity in a direction that, based upon your assessment, suggests that as the brain changes itself in that direction, the patient will feel better or attend better, or whatever are the goals of the training.
You're going to hear the phrase filtered waveforms. So the raw EEG contains all of the EEG. And I've had musicians explain it to me that if you think about music, you've got a whole orchestra, and then you've got their amplifiers and whatever, and you can make it so that the bass is louder, right? You can filter that, or you can filter it so that you don't hear the violins as much, or whatever. And that's what we're doing here. We're selecting certain waveforms that we want to look at to either increase or decrease. All right. All right. The colors of the sensors. The colors are meaningless. Okay. They're helpful in that here I have, at the end of the sensors, I have the colors. And so the red is plugged into the reference of channel 1. And so it's easy when I'm working to know that this is going to be my reference sensor, the red one. Whereas the yellow is plugged into the plus. That means, sorry, not reference. What's the word? It's the, it's the referential. Yeah. Whereas the plus is the active. Okay. If I'm doing referential training, I have an active that's referencing the reference sensor. And then the black is going to be the ground, and that says GND. And so again, when I want to put a ground on, I know I've got the black matches where I have the ground. Now, if I do this, now the yellow becomes the ground. It doesn't matter what color the sensor is, it matters where it's plugged into the amplifier. So one of the things that we stress is routine And if you have a black sensor, it's a good thing to think of that as the ground. Sometimes you don't have a black sensor. Your black sensor breaks. Okay, what do? You use another color and you put it in there. But for purposes of just kind of making you think less, if you can keep the black one as the ground, that makes your life a little simpler.
Yeah, so they're all of the same. I mean, you know, the colors do not change anything about the sensor. I mean, the sensor is the sensor. The color only allows you to kind of know which one is in the ground and which one is in the active and so forth.
One of the things that you'll see here, I can't really see it too well on the screen. They're twisted. Okay, sensor wires just like get twisted. And so if you have any type of OCD about you, you're going to want to untwist them. And we're going to suggest you don't do that. Okay, in this software setup, if the wires are twisted from an electrical viewpoint, that's a better thing. You need them a little bit untwisted at the end so that you can hook them up, right? If they're twisted right down to the bottom, you're not going to be able to put them at different locations.
And let me say, that's a wise precaution. 20 years ago, that was really necessary. The twisting of them helps them to not be as susceptible to the electrical noise, you know, around you. Sensors today are much better made, and so the twisting probably isn't as necessary, but as we say, it's a good precaution.
All right, so now I've got my 3 sensors and I need to put some 1020 on them. The 1020 that we have today is in a jar. It also comes in a tube, doesn't matter. Okay, and I already put that much on a Q-tip. That's a good size P. Okay, but I spread it between 2 sensors. So I've basically got half a P on each sensor, and now I got to get a little bit more. And, you know, over the years, I've adapted. How do you hold these, right? Not such a good idea to lay them down, because if you lay them down, wherever you lay them is going to get sticky. But while you're learning, make sticky, make a mess. It doesn't matter. Okay. A lot of people keep something handy. We have these coasters in the office. They're just glass coasters. And some people that work here like to put the coaster on the table and then they lay the sensor on the coaster. For aseptic reasons, I haven't laid down the Q-tip. It's been in my hand the whole time. I didn't lay it on the table. If I lay it on the table, I'm not going to use it again. I haven't put it on anybody's head. I haven't touched it. So I'm going to dip back into my container. And now I've got all 3 of my sensors, and now I'm going to lay down the Q-tip, or I can throw it in the garbage. May as well throw it in the garbage because I know I have enough 1020 on it. Okay, now I got to measure his head and I got to put new prep on his head. And so I got a couple of choices. I can lay my sensors down. If I'm going to do that, I want to lay them on that coaster because I don't want to make a mess. Okay, or I can have something fashioned in my office. I got to turn the computer so you guys can see us. Something fashioned in my office that I could hang it on. Okay, one of the things that I really like are these clips. Okay, I use them a lot. So I could put the clips so that it can move, right? I'm not clipping on the wire. And then I could clip it onto the end of the chair or somewhere else. But another thing that I like to do is just involve the people, especially if I have a kid. So with the kid, I'm like, man, I'm going to give you the super important job. Okay. For an adult, I'm just like, could you do me a favor and hold that? Hold it so that it doesn't touch anything, so that nothing gets on nothing else. See what I'm doing here? This is like toothpaste. Okay, you want to get it to the bottom of the tube, and you don't want to squish it out like this because it might go in your face. Some people, again, like to put it on the coaster, put a little dab on the coaster. I just put it right on the Q-tip, but I didn't measure him. So I'm going to measure him. Remember that system? I'm going to measure him from the nasium to the inion. I find CZ, which is between my two thumbs. But then I'm going to start with FZ. That's where I'm going to start this midline assessment. So FZ is 20% forward from CZ. If from here to here, can you bend your head down, right? From CZ to the nasium is 50%. I'm going to find 25%. And then I'm just going to scooch back a little bit, and that's going to give me 20%. I'm going to keep my finger there. I keep keeping a finger there while I get my new prep. And this is where it's easier to put the new prep on the coaster, because you can have a little blob there and just dip your Q-tip in it. All along, I've kept my finger there, because if I move my finger and go over here, then I got to come back and measure again, which you will do. Trust me, you're going to do that. I still do it sometimes. Okay, now I'm cleaning him off really good. I'm abrading. People talk about, is it easier to do somebody who has a lot of hair or no hair? Generally, I find it easier to do somebody who has a little bit of hair or a lot of hair as opposed to no hair, because the people with no hair have also calloused skin. So you got to rub a little bit more.
I have a question.
Yep.
Sorry. When I was trying to place the sensor like behind the ear and on the forehead, I don't know, maybe my husband should have showered before. I don't know if it was what was getting in the way, but it was really hard to get a suction. And like, in order to get like the, you know, the impedance check and the lights to be all three in a row, I felt like I had to keep pressing down, and I was trying to add more of the, what do you call it? The new prep. And I wasn't sure, like, how do you keep it on them? How do you get to suction on better?
So a lot of topics in there.
Sorry.
No, that's good. That's the question you have, everybody else, if they don't already have it, they're going to have it in the future. It's going to come up. So there's a balance between too much 10/20 and not enough. You need the right amount. If you put too much, it's going to like impede. It's actually going to create a barrier. If you don't have enough, it's not going to draw the electrical current.
And the other thing is with the new prep, which is what you were saying, the new prep's a cleaner, and it can be very, very slippery. So if, and in particular up against just skin and without any hair at all. So if you find that you know, the sensor is kind of slipping around, once you have used the new prep to clean the area, you can wipe it away with a tissue, so that you're then left with just dry skin that the 10/20 will adhere to a lot easier.
Okay, so I've got him cleaned it up to Z. I'm gonna put that sensor on. And do you see, I have a choice of how to put the sensor. Let me bring it to you guys. I can put it this way on his head, or I can put it this way on his head. If I put it the second way, I've got a cord in front of his face. So if I bring it around the back and I put it the other way, I just make it a little nicer for him. And I'm going to press on it, and the extra new 1020 is going to come kind of swishing out of the sides. Okay, I'm going to get him to help me again.
I'm sorry.
And
I have another.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have another question. I don't know if anybody else is having trouble seeing the screen because I think it's sharing the Be Medic. So it's very.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. Is that okay? I'm just having a hard time seeing it.
Better?
Much better. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
What?
Okay, a little bit more new prep, and I'm going to put on the ground and the reference. I'm gonna put
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
the reference behind his left ear. Why? Because I don't want to get brainwaves. Right? I'm trying to not measure brainwaves here. And I'm going to take the red one.
Sticky stuff.
And I usually use the clean side of the Q-tip to kind of push it on because I don't like to use my fingers. If it's not sticking, one of the things you can do is put like a cotton pad. Having a little trouble here, so I do have to use my fingers.
Mhm.
Okay. So if I feel like it's not sticking on, and this can be harder with kids, I can take a little piece of a cotton pad and put it right on top of it. And that helps it stay on a little bit better. Because it's like putting a Band-Aid over the top of it. Okay, and then finally, I'm going to put on the ground. The ground can go anywhere. Why is that? Does anybody know? It's an electronics question. I'm going to put it here.
Okay,
What?
okay.
You want it over here?
No, we had said we were putting
Okay,
it
well,
here, but
Well, but I'm making a
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to put it here. How come I have to put the reference behind the ear where there's no brain waves, but I can put the ground where there are brain waves? Okay, I can do that because the ground's not measuring brain waves. It's only providing the electrical circuit. So it's not reading, okay? It's doing something from an engineering point of view that I can't explain to you, but it's not reading. Okay, how'd I do? I don't want to move that too far, but I've got 3 greens, okay? And so it's the black one, the ground is a little bit less well connected, okay? There's a little bit more impedance than the other 2. But if I look, the ground is at 10 K ohms and the other 2 are at 5, and I have 3 green lights, so I'm going to go. Could I get better? Yeah. I could get it so that this top red would be green. My ground would have to be better connected. But
yeah,
this works.
yeah, if the greens are within one row of one another, you're certainly fine. With a kid that's really active and you've tried a couple, or a person that for whatever reason, getting impedance is difficult. If you at least have all of them in the green, you're okay. If you have a hard time and you're running out of time in the training hour, and you've got one in the orange and a couple in in the green, and that one in the orange, you just can't get it. You can't get it. You can't get it. Then that's when the balance up here becomes a factor. When you cannot get them all in the green, and then eventually you'll be able to. But early on, maybe you can't, and again, time is running out, and so then you want the balance again, ideally to be in the green. If it's in the orange, you're okay. It's not the best, but if it means training or not training, you should go ahead. So, again, we only worry about the balance when all of them aren't in the green.
Okay, so I've got my little clip. I'm going to put that around the wires. And I'm going to clip it onto him so that I have a better chance of the sensors not falling off. So he's all hooked up. We've got him hooked up at FZ. And now we can do, you changed it to a minute, right? Did you change it to a minute or do you do 30 seconds?
Well, 30's the minimum. I mean, you won't get
Why don't you just
any
say it?
data.
Yeah.
So in the assessment, in what I've written up, I say to get the 30 seconds of data with each epoch, with each reading. That's a minimum. If you get less than 30 seconds, there's a chance that it doesn't give the program enough of the data to do the calculation. So you can certainly do more than 30 seconds. Some people do a 45 or a minute. You should not need, for sure, more than in a minute.
We're going to do 45 today.
Good.
Okay. All right. So I'm back to the what we call the therapist screen. And I'm going to mark in here that we're doing a recording at FZ. And it's FZA1 to be exact. All right. And then I'll write in here midline assessment. Okay. And at FZ, we're going to collect this data with eyes open.
No. Closed, because we want to avoid artifact.
Okay, so talk about then how that compares with looking at the data at C. We can do that later at
Yeah.
CZ with the eyes open.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we at FZ, we want to make sure that we get good data, and the frontal lobes are susceptible to artifact from the blinking of the eyes or eye movements. And so we just get at the data with the eyes closed to avoid those sorts of factors.
So I've explained to him, we're just collecting data. I don't want him to do any meditation. I just want him to sit there with his eyes closed. We're going to do that for 45 seconds. I will be quiet while he's doing it. And I have a timer down here where I can then see how far along we are. And we're going to do this 3 times. Okay, we're going to collect 3 different epochs because what we want to do is watch the data while we're collecting it. And up here, and we want to use the epoch that has what we're going to call the cleanest data. Okay, watch what happens here. I neglected to tell you guys, so I did think of it earlier and then we were talking about it, okay? So I'm gonna go, he's been instructed, he's gonna close his eyes, we're ready to go. I'm gonna hit the start button. Let me get rid of this, I can't see you guys, but. Wow, guys, sorry, okay. Holds everything here. So there's 2 things that went wrong, and this is good. So Mitch pointed out to me that I had not turned off the impedance check on the NeuroAmp. And I guess they updated the system because I wanted to prove to you that the program will show me I didn't turn off the impedance check, but I hit start and the impedance check turned off. And that bewildered me. And then I turned around to look at Mitch, and our keyboard is very, very, very sensitive. And my finger tapped it and it stopped the data collection. So there's lots
Which
of.
is actually fine because when the program turned off the impedance check, Angelica whispered to me, the program turned it off, and I reopened my eyes to kind of look because it's surprising. So that epoch would not be any good.
All right. So now what I'm going to do, I have 2 choices. I can get out of the right? I can start over and do another whole set of data collection, but you saw that I wrote in there, first run is not good. And you see this one, that's showing 1 epoch of data collection that will be analyzed, okay? This is interesting. This is an interesting concept. So you can pause the training or the data collection, but if I don't hit 2 here, it's going to then include that first set of data with what I'm going to run now. And I don't want that. I want a whole clean set of data. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's good to make mistakes. You can kind of like see how to fix them. All right, so I'm going to hit that. And now you see that number 2, that little number 2 down there. Okay, so that means I'm collecting a whole new set of data. Okay, so I'm telling my client, we're going to go again. And I don't usually say to the client, oh, I made a mistake, right? I'll usually say something like, I wanted to check something because there's been an upgrade and I just want to make sure that my system and I are looking at things the way I expected to. So we're going to start all over. All right, so here we go again. Okay, now we're gonna pause. He can open his eyes. Just doing okay, everything okay, you're feeling fine. Check in with him, and we're gonna do this 2 more times.
Well, let me say, she's being very, very cautious again. We would only need to do it once more. I mean, we said we were going to get 3. And we do that because we want to ensure that we'll get at least 1. We only need 1 that is good data. The first one wasn't good. As long as we think either the second one or the third are pretty good, that's really all we need.
Yeah, but I think with you guys practicing, it's good to plan to have 3.
Okay,
All right. This is where routine is really important. So we just chatted a little bit, right? I gotta make sure before I start again that I hit that +1 because I want to now collect the 3rd run of data. So it's +1, that's going to give me 3 down here, right? Okay, it sets my timer back to 0. And over here, I have the total time that I've run. So I collected about 45 seconds of data, and previously I had about an additional like 18, I think. So I'm ready to go again. I tell my client to be ready. He's got his eyes closed, and here we go. Okay, a pause. All right. And what are we seeing? Okay, up here, we're seeing the raw EEG. And here we're seeing the power. How many microvolts is the raw EEG? So it fluctuates from like 15 up here. We have a bigger one up to, let's say, 28. Now, I don't know, open up your eyes. I don't know about this, right? Because this hasn't gotten changed yet.
right, and it's not changed. It's
Okay.
only changed in the new report,
Which we don't have yet. Okay, okay. So in the future, these numbers are going to be a little bit different. We'll go over that in the next practicum. Okay, so now I've got 3 sets of data collection. If I were being really thorough, I would do another one because I already know that first one wasn't good. It was very short, but in the interest of time, I also want to get to all the data collection and allow enough time to go over the report with you. So I'm going to do a quick hookup at CZ.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Don't be
don't
sorry.
be- this is
I
good, Olive, this
want
is good.
questions.
Yeah, I'm a very kinesthetic learner. So when I'm like watching and doing it at the same time, it's like very helpful. So I appreciate it.
Oh, good.
So with the first one, when there was like a, mistake and you just press the +1 on the bottom, so the report it will still include that mistake, but how would we know, like, it would just be separate from all the other ones, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's why I put in the notes that the first, that one was bad data and it will be separated. Lots of times people don't put things in the notes, and that works while you're looking at the report. But if in 6 months you've got 4 reports, you might not remember like what happened.
Okay. The other option would be just to start all over again and like plug in the numbers.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to measure at CZ. Okay, so I go back, I'm going to get my measurement. And that part we kind of have gone over. So CZ is easy, right? It's between my two fingers. I'm going to clean that area. And I am going to put a little bit more paste on the sensor, 1020 paste, because some got left behind at FZ. And here at CZ, I can take the back of the Q-tip to push it down rather than my fingers. And I'll do a quick impedance check. Looks good. The ground got a little bit worse. So I'm actually going to go back and fix up that ground. They're still all green, but I'm going to be a little bit of a perfectionist about that.
Grounds on
On the front, yeah. So I'm going to clean it up a little bit again and just put a little bit more paste on it. And hopefully I get better impedance. Oh, yeah.
Did you say that you put a Q-tip, or not a Q-tip, a cotton ball on one of the sensors to hold it in place better?
I did, yeah, yeah. So for instance, I don't need it at the CZ, but I kind of take a little piece of it. And if you tilt your head down, I can just put it right on top of it.
Did you put any paste on the cotton ball or no?
Nothing on the cotton ball, no.
Okay.
The idea of the cotton ball is to hold down the sensor. And it's kind of like I said, it's kind of like a little bit like a Band-Aid. It just stretches over and it uses like the excess gunk on the head. If
Okay.
somebody has hair, I find it a lot easier. So like say you wanted to do my CZ. Okay, so we part, we put the sensor there, but then literally take the hair and put it over it and let the weight of the hair hold it down.
Okay.
So people with hair are generally easier to work with than people with no hair, even though it's easier to find the location on the people with no hair.
Yeah, I think the worst perhaps are the people with buzz cuts where the hair is maybe an eighth of an inch, so you can't part the hair. Those can be a little tricky, and you just needed to use the right amount of paste to achieve the connection.
I said I wasn't going to ask any questions.
Okay, thank you. Next.
So if I am dealing with somebody who's like African American and they have braids or weaves or anything like that, is that better or not better? Like, just so I could prep them appropriately for their session.
It's hard to, so I'm going to jump way ahead. Collecting Q data is hard with that. Okay, of course you can't do it with a wig. But if you have generally speaking, if they have cornrows or dreadlocks, you can get pretty close to where you need to be. And as far as like where the sensor goes, yes, we want to measure. Yes, we want to do our work precisely. But if the CZ would be right here, and that happens to be right where the row is, if you go there, you're going to be okay. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And it says the impedance meter is on. I'm going to turn it off. And I'm going to change this to CZ. You got to find it. That stays at A1. And I'm going to add here at FZ. Three EPOCHS collected. All right. Okay,
Hit
so,
pause. Did you hit pause every single time? So you have not hit stop yet?
right. When I
Okay.
hit stop, it's going to calculate the data.
Okay.
All right, so now I'm going to hit +1 again, because I'm going to be in my 4th section of data collection, my 4th epoch. And we're going to collect all of these 3 with eyes open. For the purposes of this talk, I'm going to do 2 data collections.
And just the reason for CZ with the eyes open is that is what the theta beta measurement at CZ is about. It's about with its eyes open, and it's that theta beta measurement that you might be aware. That's one of the ways that you look for the presence of an attentional issue.
So get used to, as you're working, just to look at the raw EEG, okay? And just get a feel for it, okay? This looks like this. We're going to see, does it look different at CZ? It's going to be eyes open. It should look different, okay? So we've got 2 changes, eyes open and different locations. So it definitely should look different. You ready? Okay, so he's not looking at a screen. I would have him just in front of a monitor that's turned off, say, are you comfortable? Here we go. All right, and we're going to pause. That was really good. I give him a little encouragement, ask him how he's doing. I hit the plus again, and we're going to collect our 5th epoch. And you see, I've got it marked down here, right? I could actually put 3. I don't need that today, but I might need to know that in 3 months. So here we go again, eyes open. We're going to do another 45 seconds. Did I hit the plus? Yep. I can tell I hit it because it's not there. And here we go. Okay, pause. And before I get up, I'm going to hit the plus again because I'm going to be really annoyed if I forget to do that later. And I'm already marking down. I know I'm going to do 3 epochs at PZ. Do you want to talk about why, and I'll work this?
PZ, we are going to get 1 with the eyes open, 1 with the eyes closed, one with the eyes open. Now, these need to be all good because we are going to be looking at changes that should occur between the eyes open and the eyes closed. So if during this furthest epoch, there's a problem, you know, the person sneezes or they begin to talk to you for whatever reason, you're going to want to do another eyes open. So you want to get a good data with the eyes open, good data with the eyes closed, and again, good data with the eyes open again. Hopefully you can do that in 3 epochs, but you know, things happen there. You know, it might be a knock at the door or something that causes an interruption.
Okay, I hooked him up at PZ. I checked the impedance. I turned the impedance check off. And so we're ready to go. This time, we're going to start with the eyes open. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Did you notice a difference in the size of the power?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, again, I try to double check myself when I can. I already hit that plus, so we're good to go. I'm checking my client feels comfortable, and we're going to do 45 seconds with eyes open. Here we go. Okay, pause. One of the things you might not have noticed, but there's no feedback sound, right? I had that turned off because we don't want him to get any feedback. We're just collecting data. And now we're going to do 45 seconds with eyes closed. I've already explained that to him. So again, I'm going to remind him, no meditation. The other thing that we didn't say earlier is we always check, you know, are your cell phones off or in airplane mode? We don't want to have any electronic interference while we're doing any of the training. It's less of an issue now with modern amplifiers and systems, but still it's something to be aware of. All right, so you're ready. 45 seconds, eyes closed. And I noticed a problem. Open your eyes. So I've got 3 epochs here. 4, 5, 6 with the eyes open, 7 with the eyes closed. I should be on 7. It says 6. And I hit the +1,
You did.
so it didn't record it.
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's an odd thing.
That's an odd thing. So now I'm kind of like, I got a little bit of a quandary here. Because I'm calculating in my head, well, if this is going to calculate together with eyes open and eyes closed, it's not good data. So let me see where we are. I'm going to hit this +1. Now it gives me 7. I'm going to start over with eyes open.
No, I
Because,
think the eyes open, the first. Oh,
because,
you're right. Yeah, yep, yes, yes.
okay. You all follow, that happens too. I mean, I clearly hit the +1. I don't know why it didn't take it. So now, PZ eyes, I gotta mark this down, PZ problem.
It's good because it could easily happen to any one of us and we'll know how
Oh,
to navigate
yeah, yeah.
troubleshooting. So I appreciate it at the same time.
First epoch
Well, like 6.
is bad. Yep. 6. So there are 4 epochs. Ignore number 6. All right. I got to write that, like in a month, am I going to be able to understand what I did? So I think we're good. So we're going to do eyes open. Here we go. Okay, pause. I want to tell you the way I realized that error happened is I watched this down here and it was way past 45. I was like, what happened? Okay, so I could just as well have that happen with, a client. And again, so then I just want to say, the software tells me things. I wanted to make sure that it was doing exactly what I wanted to do. I wouldn't say to a client, some kind of glitch here. I'm not sure what happened, so I'll just say, software told me something. I just want to start this over again without a big explanation. So now we're going to do eyes closed. I'm going to hit that plus, and now I'm back to 0 and number 8. Ready with eyes closed? Here we go. Pause, and now I'm going to go right into eyes open. Ready? Gotta hit the plus. And pause. And now we're done with the data collection. That was a total of 7 minutes and 36 seconds of data collection, but it took us a lot longer, didn't it? All right. So now I'm going to hit the stop, and that's going to generate the report. And while the report's generating, I'm going to unhook him. To unhook him, I'm going to put some alcohol on a cotton pad. There we go. I just take the sensors off and I clean off the excess 1020.
Are they watching?
I think they can see me a little bit. You can see me a little bit, right? I mean, the cleaning, I think it's more that we
Yeah.
want to show you what the equipment is doing rather than cleaning off. That's why I'm describing it. And again, I'm not like laying the sensors down anywhere.
So cleaning the sensors is just wiping it down, right? With a
Yes,
tissue.
just with the tissue
That's it.
or I usually do a tissue and then I finish it up with the Q-tip.
Mm.
But you're not using alcohol on it or anything like that. You can put it in what, a saline solution if you want.
Yeah, if you want to, and at the end of a day or between clients, you can soak the sensors in distilled water. Do not use tap water or anything like that. I mean, but that's really not necessary, but some people like to do that.
Yeah, I think we did that for like a week once, and then we never did it again. Okay, I'm gonna finish cleaning off the sensors, just so I can put them down, and then we'll do the report. This won't take longer than.
Can I ask you what you do about the silver cups? Because sometimes they get tarnished. Do you clean them in a different way, or how do you keep them from tarnishing? Or do you just have to replace them?
Yeah, eventually you'll see you won't get good impedance,
Mm.
but no, we don't do anything with them. You can't.
Well, yeah. Silver cups aren't the same as,
Do you have cups or do you have do you actually have cups or are they flats?
I have cups.
You have cups? Huh.
Mhm.
Okay.
They're really expensive. That's why I don't really want to replace them. I'd like to use them as long as I can.
Yeah,
Are
so you see here, I don't know, can you see what I'm doing?
Mhm.
Yeah, like I take a Q-tip and run it around in there.
Are you using something other than silver? Are you using tin?
these electrodes, Jenny, are what are called sintered electrodes. And frankly, I'm not sure of the material, but these are very, very sensitive electrodes. These cost more than the silver or the gold or the silver chloride. These are used largely because if you're going to do infralow training, you're measuring a direct current as opposed to an alternating current, and the direct current line is much it's noisier potentially anyway. So these are different sensors from what you're using.
Would you just say the name again? I missed it.
Sintered, SINTERED. No way. it's got, well,
It's got all of,
with all this changing around,
okay,
this is horrible.
okay. So I think what happened here, did he download anything to our system?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're working directly with the engineer and right before, and he's like, he works with us all times a day. He'll work with us Saturdays, he'll work with us Sundays, but he like, you can't stop him. And he like insisted that he wanted to download the program this morning. So he must have downloaded the program and it's not working. So I don't have the breakdown of the data. Okay, of what we just did. And that's happened with a client too. And what can you do? I mean, what we do at that point, we don't charge the client. We're like, this is part of what happens with neurofeedback. Kind of harkens me back to the day when we first started, there used to be a lot of electrical interference. If somebody turned on a light, it could ruin your data, right? If somebody turned on a microwave, God forbid, it would change everything. And so Mitch learned 2 years before me to do neurofeedback. And I can remember very well, like I'd be running a session and I'd like run downstairs to him and be like, what's going on? My program's not working. Right? And he would walk in very calmly and fix it. And I'd be like, oh, thank God. But now we've got this thing where we're getting upgrades on our software. And this reminds me of me running downstairs to Mitch's office, and he's going to come in calmly now.
Well, yeah. Bring up an ordinary report from, anybody, so we can at least look at the data that they'll be looking at.
Okay. There must be some data in here. There is some.
Yeah, but
It's like
none
so
of
much
the
and garbled.
tables-
Yeah, yeah.
none of
it's-
the tables are.
Okay, so let's go to file. Session folder. And where do I go? Okay, who? I don't know who any of these people are. Amy Bernstein.
Yeah. See if they're.
Amy works for us, so I'm allowed to say her name. I don't know what any of these things are. No.
No, I think you're gonna want to be Adobe. Okay. So what you will get with your version of the software, you will get one of these tables. I mean, you'll also get the other things, the trend lines and so forth, but this is what you'll be looking at. You'll get one of these for each of the epochs. And again, you want to choose the one at FZ and the one at CZ that you think is the cleanest, the one where the client sat there very nicely and there weren't interruptions, and the data that you were watching did not show any huge changes, which again would only occur if for whatever reason they moved around or they sneezed or they coughed or so you would choose one that through your observation seems like it is good data. And
Can I
then,
interrupt you?
sure,
And then I'm looking at this one and I can also see this is not good data.
right.
Okay. And the way I can see it is if I look, it's telling me I did one channel training, which is true. Okay. And it's telling me in the delta band, right? And we can look up what would be delta, but it would be basically 1 to 4. It's telling me that the lowest measure measurement, the lowest amplitude was 2.97 and the highest was 185 microvolts. So the average, the mean would have been 22 microvolts and the standard deviation would be 35.5. That's
Not
a
happening.
big range.
Not happening. That's, a brain isn't capable of that large of a range or that large of an amplitude. So this recording has some, artifact in it, but that for our purposes, that, isn't a huge problem, because I'm just going to tell you the things that you want to look at. And so I've got 10 minutes here. So one thing you want to look at each of the epochs is at the theta
They
beta
can't see your
ratio.
finger, you gotta use the mouse.
Thank you.
Can I share my husband's like that? Because I have a screenshot of this part when I did Peasy.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I did it correctly. Like I'm not sure, but the numbers, I'm just wondering if they look more normal. I mean, like they more accurate, more or less.
better
Yeah.
yet, let her share,
Yeah,
let her share. Well, it's not letting me let you share.
because it's a different thing with, but I don't know exactly what it is.
No, I know exactly what it is. Kristen, can you, if you're still there, can you see if you can let her share?
Yes, I
Invite
can.
her.
I'm so sorry. Who am I allowing to share?
Allah,
Allah. Oh, my screen
Oh,
says
good.
she is sharing. There we go. She's
Very good. Okay,
This is okay.
yeah, so this is good. Oh,
Oops, sorry. Can you see it?
yes, yes,
beautiful.
okay. So,
Okay, but you see the difference in the numbers there already? They're not as crazy.
yeah, the delta is within, the range that you would ordinarily see delta. If you see anything that it is above 100 microvolts, something's wrong.
Yeah, even in a little kid. So the power, little children tend to have higher power than adults. Okay, and even if you see a kid at 100 microvolts, that's a lot. I've only ever seen that once in all the years I've been doing this.
So the thing in all of the sites, you will look at the theta beta ratio. Now it, just refer to the document and it will tell you. I mean, it says there's a theta beta ratio at FZ should be less than 2.0 in adults and anyone above age 12, actually. And so if this was FZ, I mean, that's actually PZ, but if this was FZ, his theta beta ratio, the mean is 1.18. So that's below 2. That's a good thing. If it is higher than 2, the theta beta ratio then suggests that there is excess lower frequency in the theta range, lower frequency amplitude relative to higher frequency amplitude. Okay, then the other thing that you look at is physics tells us that the lower the frequency, the higher the amplitude. So except when a person closes their eyes, and that's when the alpha band should jump. In general, what you should see is the amplitude for the delta.
You're looking at her screen, so you have to tell her what to do.
Okay, could you move your cursor over to the mean? Right. Up higher, down lower, the 555. Okay, that's the mean amplitude of the delta range. That should be higher than the mean amplitude of the theta range. Since his eyes are closed, the alpha will be higher, but if this were eyes open, the mean amplitude of the theta would be higher than the alpha, would be higher than the beta. I'm sorry, the low beta would be higher than the beta, would be higher than the gamma. We can see here with him, with his eyes closed, his beta and his high beta amplitude are a little on the higher side. And so that suggests the possibility of the presence of excess higher frequency amplitude in the beta and the high beta range, which would suggest that this might be a person who is susceptible to over arousal. Now, again, this is only one epoch, and so you don't want to get carried away here, but this again suggests the presence of excess higher frequency amplitude. And then, since we are at PZ, we look at the PFA, which is the top row there, peak frequency alpha. His mean is 9.8. We want that to be between 9 and 11, which his is. If we had eyes open, eyes closed, eyes open, we would be looking to see at least a 50% increase in the mean alpha amplitude when he closes his eyes. And then when he reopens his eyes for the third epoch, the mean should get within 10% of the original eyes open mean. Now,
So that 4.46 is the number that he's talking about, a couple of rows down.
yes. Thank you. So the alpha frequency, peak alpha, and the opening and the closing, I mean, we can talk more about this in the future, but if the alpha amplitude raises less than half again what it was with eyes open, it is a marker for the possibility of residual trauma effects. Alpha is the brain's resting rhythm, and it should raise at least 50% when we close our eyes, because the brain should rest, because it is relieved of the burden of all of the visual sensory input, which is huge. It's very, very complicated. And so when we shut our eyes, the brain should rest. And that rest shows up in a rise and in the alpha peak. If the brain doesn't have that rise, it's because the brain has lost in its ability to rest, which is one of the key things that occurs with residual trauma. So, I mean, that's a very quick look at some of the things you should be looking at in the assessment. Okay, it's just about 1 o'clock. What should we do?
So, okay, I have some notes. So we do have the video that shows how to read through the reports, and that's in your platform. Sorry about that today, but I think this is what happens in the world of neurofeedback. There's updates and you just got to kind of like deal with it. Okay. I hope what we conveyed is certainly how to collect the data, all the problems that could go wrong with it, and how to read the report. And we can go through more reports. If somebody has a report and they want to bring it to the next community meeting, we can zip through that. Okay. So I think the questions are really important. So I want to encourage you to keep, throwing them out. That's how we learn, is with that happening. And whatever you don't know, somebody else doesn't know, I guarantee it.
Yeah, I'll, thanks a lot for what you asked. That was very, very helpful.
And I think the other thing is here learning from each other. I'll kind of saved the day with bringing in her data, and we have to do that. You're going to find that in workshops. There's been times where, I've been away and it's like, oh, somebody's computer doesn't work. And it's like, well, I got data here, let's do it. The data is all the same. It doesn't matter whose data we're looking at. We can learn something from it. So thanks for putting up with that confusion. Any parting questions or anything? Okay. You'll get the notifications. Send any questions in the meanwhile. And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Good to see y'all. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye, thank you.